Tell me honestly, would you have reacted the same way I did? Because when I walked into my private, remote mountain lodge, my sanctuary, my place to escape the suffocating pressure of my life, and found my son, his wife, and her entire extended family camped out, living in my space as if they owned it, I felt a kind of white, hot rage that I didn't know I was capable of. This wasn't just a simple mix-up. This was a deliberate, arrogant trespass on my property, my privacy, and frankly, my generosity. I went up there seeking peace, hoping to reset my life after months of grueling work. And instead, I found a brazen invasion that ripped the veneer off my relationship with my own flesh and blood. You think you've raised your children with respect, boundaries, and appreciation, but sometimes they remind you, in the most shocking ways, that they view your life and your assets as nothing more than an extension of their own entitlement. This story is about boundaries, betrayal, and the moment I decided that being a father didn't mean being a perpetual doormat. The lodge itself is important to understand. It wasn't just some dusty cabin. It was an architectural masterpiece I designed myself, nestled high in the Rockies, completely off the grid. It took me 5 years and a small fortune to build. It's insulated with reclaimed timber, has floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine valley, and is accessed only by a rough, private, 2-mile track that requires a 4-wheel drive vehicle. It was my escape pod, and I only visited it maybe 3 or 4 times a year. No one else had the key. No one. Or so I thought. My wife, Sarah, and I had often talked about selling it one day, but for now, it was sacred. My son, Daniel, who is 32, knew exactly how I felt about the lodge. He'd been there once years ago. He runs a small, struggling graphic design firm in the city, and he and his wife, Clara, a kind woman whom I genuinely like, live a perpetually stressed, middle-class existence. They have 2 young kids, and money is always tight. I've helped them financially countless times, down payments, car loans, covering medical bills. I've always been their safety net, and frankly, I've never minded. That's what fathers do, or at least, that's what my father did for me. My intention for this trip was solitude. I'd just wrapped up a massive, draining business deal, and my nerves were shot. I told Sarah I was heading up for a week. I didn't tell Daniel because I didn't want any distractions. I packed minimal supplies, a stack of books, and my hiking boots. The drive up the mountain track was brutal, exactly as I remembered. As I rounded the final bend, the one that gives you that breathtaking first view of the lodge, I frowned. There was a beat-up silver minivan parked carelessly beside my custom-built SUV carport. My blood immediately went cold. No one should have been up there. I drove closer and saw more. A cheap, muddy sedan parked half off the road, and worse, a tangle of children's toys, a bright red plastic slide, a deflated beach ball, and a pile of small, colorful boots strewn across the usually immaculate deck. It looked less like my private sanctuary and more like a low-budget campground. I parked my truck and stepped out, the crisp mountain air suddenly tasting like ash. The front door, which should have been locked tight, was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly. The sight that greeted me was unbelievable. My pristine living room, with its custom-made leather furniture and high-end audio system, was a disaster zone. A sleeping bag was thrown over the leather sofa. There were half-eaten bowls of cereal on the coffee table, a stack of muddy plates by the fireplace, and the faint, sweet smell of baby powder and cheap air freshener hung heavy in the air, completely masking the familiar, comforting scent of cedar and pine. I stood there for a full minute, just trying to process the audacity of it all. Then I heard voices, lots of them, laughter, shouting. The sounds were coming from the kitchen and the downstairs guest rooms. I walked towards the kitchen, my footsteps heavy on the expensive slate floor. There was Clara, my daughter-in-law, wearing one of my old, oversized lodge hoodies, stirring a massive pot on my commercial-grade stove. Sitting around my large dining table were 5 other people I immediately recognized. Clara's parents, Brenda and Larry, and her 2 younger sisters, one with a baby. They were all eating, talking loudly, and looking perfectly at home. Clara looked up, her eyes going wide with pure, unadulterated terror when she saw me. The spoon clattered from her hand onto the counter. "Oh my God, Daniel's dad. Mr. Thompson, I mean, Dad, you're here," she stammered, her face losing all color. Brenda, her mother, a large, brassy woman I've always found gratingly rude, looked at me with a frown of annoyance. "Well, look who decided to show up," Brenda drawled, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "We thought you'd be too busy to bother with this place." That's when Daniel sauntered in from the back hallway, where my primary bedroom suite is located, wearing nothing but a towel. He looked stunned, but quickly replaced it with a look of sheepish arrogance. "Dad, what a surprise! What are you doing here?" he asked, as if I were the trespasser. I didn't answer him. I addressed Clara's mother, Brenda, directly. "You are in my private residence. How did you get in here, and why is your entire family here?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. Daniel stepped in quickly, adjusting his towel. "Dad, listen, it's fine. The key, I had a copy made a while ago. You know the lease on Clara's parents' apartment ran out, and they needed a place for a week or 2, and Clara suggested your place because, well, you never use it, right? It was just temporary, we were going to clean up. Temporary. Temporary. They had been there for 3 weeks, judging by the state of the place and the amount of supplies they had brought. The sheer entitlement was suffocating. They hadn't asked. They hadn't called. They simply decided that because I wasn't using the lodge, it was available to house Clara's entire, homeless family. I walked past Daniel and into the kitchen, taking in the extent of the damage. Someone had chipped the edge of my granite countertop. A child had drawn on one of my leather dining chairs with a marker. My pristine industrial refrigerator was plastered with magnetic artwork and was humming too loudly, stuffed to the brim with cheap groceries. The entire ambience of my sanctuary was utterly ruined. I went to the utility closet and checked my equipment. My power generator, the complicated one that runs the whole house, was running on empty, nearly out of fuel. They had clearly run it constantly, not understanding the delicate balance of off-grid living. That was the last straw. The cost of their stay wasn't just the few $100s in fuel. It was the damage, the disrespect, and the complete violation of my personal space. I looked at Daniel, who was now fully dressed but still trying to smile. "I needed this week, Daniel. I told your mother I was coming. I did not give you permission to enter this house, let alone move in Clara's entire extended family," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, which made it all the more terrifying. "You stole my key, you trespassed, and you treated my property like a cheap holiday rental you didn't even pay for. What do you have to say for yourself?" Brenda chimed in again, taking a deliberate bite of toast. "Oh, calm down, Mr. Thompson. We were doing you a favor, keeping the place aired out. It's just stuff. It's not like you were using it. What's the big deal?" Her casual indifference was like gasoline on the fire. Daniel looked between us, shame finally starting to replace his bravado. "Dad, come on, they had nowhere else to go. It was an emergency. I'm your son. Can't you just be a little flexible? So that's the situation I was in. I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have calmly asked them to leave? Would you have accepted Daniel's excuse? Or would you have gone full nuclear revenge on all of them for this epic act of entitlement and betrayal? What would you have done? I took a deep breath, and the cold mountain air seemed to crystallize my fury into a plan. I was done being the nice, flexible father. I wasn't going to yell, and I wasn't going to argue. I was going to leverage the very thing they took for granted, my infrastructure. I looked directly at Daniel, and then at Brenda, and the rest of the silent, watching family. I am not flexible, I stated simply. And this is not your house. You have exactly 1 hour to pack up your families, your belongings, and every single thing you brought in here. If you are not off this property, down that track, and out of my sight by 2 p.m., I will treat you as trespassers and have you forcibly removed. Brenda let out a loud, theatrical laugh. Oh, please, you'll call the police. What are you going to say, that your own son is visiting? No, I replied, looking straight at Daniel. I will tell them that a large group of people illegally accessed my remote property, stole fuel, and are squatting. And I will show them the evidence of my broken locks and the illegal key. Daniel, you will be charged too, because you, my son, committed a felony by illegally breaking into my home. Daniel's face paled again, realizing the severity of the legal implications, especially since he owns his own business. But I wasn't done with my plan. I walked straight to the main circuit breaker. The lights were on, the refrigerator was running, and the kids were watching a movie in the downstairs den. I looked at the digital thermos that they had cranked up to a ridiculous 80 degrees. I paused for dramatic effect, ensuring every single person in that room was watching me. And then, slowly and deliberately, I flipped the main generator switch off. The silence was instantaneous and total. The house went dark, save for the natural light. The movie cut out, the heating stopped, and the humming refrigerator died. I walked back to the center of the room. The power is off. The generator is now locked in a shed, and I have the only key, I announced. And since you nearly drained the fuel tank, there's not enough remaining fuel to restart it, even if you found the key. I will not be refilling it until you are gone. The ensuing chaos was immediate and delicious. Brenda started shrieking about her frozen food. Clara's sisters started panicking about the baby formula needing to be refrigerated. Daniel looked utterly defeated. Dad, it's freezing. You can't leave us without heat. He pleaded. The temperature will drop below freezing tonight. You know that. I know. I said, completely devoid of emotion. That is why you have 1 hour to pack up and get down the mountain before the sun dips behind the ridge and the temperature drops rapidly. I suggest you start moving. That sedan of yours won't make it down the track once it frosts over. The eviction was swift and miserable. My calmness terrified them more than any shouting ever could. They rushed around, tripping over their own belongings. I stood by the door, watching the clock, completely unmoved. They couldn't shower, they couldn't cook, and they couldn't even charge their phones. The cold was a constant, urgent reminder of their deadline. Exactly 58 minutes later, the silver minivan, followed closely by the muddy sedan, spun gravel as they hurried down my private track. As Brenda drove past me, she flipped me off through the window, but her face was a picture of defeat. The aftermath was painful but necessary. Sarah was initially upset, calling my actions extreme. But when I showed her the marker on the chair, the chip in the granite, and explained the near destruction of the generator, she quickly realized the depth of Daniel's entitlement and the brazenness of Clara's family. For Daniel, the consequences were severe and lasting. We insisted he pay for all repairs, including the granite chip and the cost of the generator fuel he wasted. I also presented him with a hefty rental fee, equal to a month's high-end rental in that area, payable over the next 6 months. It wasn't about the money, it was about teaching him that my property and my labor have value. Crucially, I cut him off financially. No more safety net. He needed to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, without resorting to stealing from his own father. The confrontation shattered the illusion of our perfect, cozy family. Daniel was furious for months, convinced I was cruel and heartless. But over time, the distance forced him to mature. He had to work harder, and his business slowly started to stabilize. He eventually paid me every cent he owed, though the apology was slow in coming and felt forced. It took over a year for us to start speaking regularly again, and even now, the relationship is formal, lacking the warmth we once had. He has never, and will never, set foot in the mountain lodge again. As for Clara's family, I never saw them again, and Clara apologized profusely to me 6 months later, admitting her mother convinced Daniel it was a harmless idea. The ultimate revenge wasn't financial. It was the re-establishment of my boundaries and the reclamation of my peace. I got my sanctuary back, but I also learned the hard truth. Sometimes, the most loving thing a father can do is say a firm, resounding no, and stand by it, even if it feels like tearing your heart out, like this video, if you were on my side, and you think I did the right thing by teaching Daniel a harsh lesson about respect. Subscribe for more shocking stories of family betrayal and unexpected revenge, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess, especially what you would have done about Brenda. I'll see you all in the next story.